Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 2MB Studios on Twitch. I'm your host, Misinformation, for tonight on the show, That Sounds Right. My co-host is also here in the studio with me. Will, are you here?
I am Misinformation. How are you?
I'm doing great, Will. Are you ready for another week of That Sounds Right?
I am so ready. I'm ready to hear some right answers, hear some accuracy in the answers, and most of all, I just want to give people some points this week. Can we do that? Some right points for right answers?
Oh, no. Will, on this show, as you know, we only give points for answers that sound right. Now, I'm sure there will be correct answers given tonight. Do I care? Absolutely not. I'm here to give points. I really don't, Will. I'm here to give points for answers that sound right.
Well, we'll do our best to get some right answers tonight. Fingers crossed.
We'll see. We have three excellent contestants here tonight. Let's bring them on out. We have John Serpico. John.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Thanks for being on the show. We've got Chris Kaufman here.
Hi, everyone. I'm very smart.
Yes, true. Excellent. Not that it matters. Whitney Hawkins. Wow.
Hello.
Whitney, are you learning anything in that book?
Sure am.
Well, it won't help you. Thanks so much for being here tonight, everybody, on That Sounds Right. Now, as the contestants know, and as the audience now know, this is a show where you give answers and you get points if they sound right to me and if they sound right to the audience, of course. We're going to dive right in tonight with our first question. Now, one of you is going to be giving a correct answer to this question, but only one. Now, I am going to give 5 points to the contestant that gives an answer that sounds right to me. The first question is, what is the fastest muscle in the human body? And why does that make sense from an evolutionary perspective? I'm going to give that question one more time. What is the fastest muscle in the human body? And why does that make sense from an evolutionary perspective? All right. Now, John, I'm going to come to you for your answer first. Tell me.
Sure. So any animal, including humans, whose eyes face forward are predators, carnivores, and eyes facing forward are meant to chase prey. So because our eyes are forward, we have a relatively small field of vision, which means that our fastest muscles, well, there are several muscles in your neck, but one of the muscles that's responsible for lateral turning of the head is the quick twitchiest muscle in the body.
I see. So your answer is the quick twitchiest muscle is a muscle in the neck?
Mm-hmm.
And
right under the ear.
For hunting.
Yes.
Exciting. Thank you, John, for an answer that may sound right. We'll see. Chris, I'm coming to you next. What is the fastest muscle?
Well, Misinformation. John was close, but just a little bit off. It's actually the eye. The muscle in the eye, the orbiculus oculi, and it actually twitches within 100 milliseconds. And it makes a lot of sense because, as John was saying, we need to be able to see our predators and potentially mates.
Oh, Chris, I can your strategy already. Now I'm going to come to you for your answer.
The answer, of course, is the heart. The human heart needs to run without us even thinking about it. And it has to go slow for some people and very quickly for others. So we all have the capacity to move our hearts very fast without using our brains.
I see. So your argument is it is the heart that is the fastest muscle because it needs to keep us alive.
Yes.
I see. So we have 3 answers, audience. And in a moment, I'm going to assign points for the answer that I think sounds the most right. We have John, who thinks it is the neck.
A connective muscle in the neck under the ear.
A connective muscle in the neck under the ear. We have Chris, who believes it is the eyes.
That's correct.
And Whitney saying the heart. Now, I am going to come to the audience for input during this. So audience, please weigh in if you think you know the right answer. Right away, Whitney's answer jumps out at me as being the most important muscle because you are right, Whitney. It does keep us alive.
Indeed. Yes, and as we all know, evolutionarily, sometimes we fall in love. And then the heart moves much faster.
The heart wants what it wants, however quickly, I suppose.
Exactly.
But Whitney, I mean, don't you want to fall in love slowly? Otherwise, you'll make a horrible mistake, right?
Again, Chris, the heart wants what it wants.
Speaking of horrible mistakes, I'm pretty sure the Arbiculus oculi is the seeing stone that drove Saruman to madness in the Two Towers. So whatever it is Chris is suggesting, if you see one on the street, do not pick it up and try to track hobbits with it.
It's very quick, John. It's very quick.
These are all excellent points. Now, I think there's only one way to decide this particular answer. What I want you to do is I want you to each move that muscle as fast as you can. So Whitney, go ahead and move your heart as fast as you can. Chris, move your eyes as fast as you can. John, go ahead and move your neck as fast as you can. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, demonstrate, please. Okay, all right. Chris, you're supposed to move your eyes and you ended up moving your neck.
Well, I found a mate, so I had to move my neck.
And you were moving your heart.
Mm-hmm.
All three, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah.
You could not stop moving your heart. The audience is giving me no help. I've been searching the comments. They're all just talking about how hot everybody is, which is true, but doesn't help me, misinformation, decide a winner. So Dr. Crumbles, thank you, finally. Dr. Crumbles has weighed in, believes that Chris is right about the eyes. Thank you, Dr. Crumbles, for helping. Yes, you are helping. Now, Dr. Crumbles is our resident doctor here. It makes sense that a doctor would know. So I'm going to go ahead and side with Dr. Crumbles here, and I'm going to give 5 points to Chris for our first point. Our first 5 points. Chris, congratulations.
Will actually here, and Chris is correct. We're starting off the game on a good foot. Well done.
Will, you're welcome.
That's what I like.
And thank you, Dr. Crumbles, for the assistance. I knew that you would point me in the correct direction. That answer did sound right to me. Let's go to our second question in the first round. The second question is, the Micronesian island of Yap has historically used a very unique currency. What is it? I'm going to ask that question one more time. The Micronesian island of Yap has historically used a very unique currency. What is it? Chris, I'm coming to you for your answer first.
Yes, misinformation. It's actually the term of it is called falk, F-A-L-K. It's a white powder. It's a ground up stone, and the weight of it is essentially how you transfer goods and services.
The weight of the falk.
Yes. They'd weigh the powder, how much weight it is. You would perhaps get an extra oxen.
I see. So depending on how much falk you have given.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you for that answer. That doesn't sound right, but we'll see. Whitney, what's your answer?
Yeah, on Yap, they actually use a live clam. It's called a tongan, and it is so unique because it needs to be kept alive in order to be used as currency. So it is a constant battle of kind of finding more out in the water to be used as currency, then can be eaten.
I see. And what is it called?
Tongan.
Tongan. The Tongan clam is the currency,
Mm-hmm.
but only if alive. So That's very interesting. So if you collected a bunch of Tongan and they all died, that would be a massive loss of wealth.
Right, you could still eat it. I mean, it's still useful, but no, as currency, it has to be alive.
Okay, very interesting. That would be an unusual currency. John, what's your answer?
So both Chris and Whitney's answers would be far more convenient and easy to manage than the actual answer, which is this. Incredibly heavy stones, super heavy stones that the heaviest ones weigh several tons. And to actually use them as currency, people essentially just say, oh, that stone over there, that's my stone. Would you like that stone? Give me your house, and then you can gain possession of that stone. So the stones never move, but the ownership of the stone changes, and it's something of an oral tradition that keeps track of it.
Very interesting. And it's determined by weight?
Actually, the weight has nothing to do with the value. The value is more steeped in history. There are several thousand of them. The smallest of these stones, they're called rye stones. Mm-hmm. The smallest of them could fit in your hand. The largest of them are the size of a small car. But all of them have weight that is kind of dependent on a lot of different things.
It seems very hard to, understand across many generations. I'm having a hard time with that. And also, Whitney, I just got to say, I immediately thought of Cisco when I heard your answer.
The tong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this dates way before Cisco. Also, how do they create the powder?
Oh, it's a simple grinding process. There's several sticks moved together. Have you ever ground a rock?
I have not. Have you?
It's quite sensual. I recommend it with a partner.
That's how Cisco makes his songs, too. The sensual grinding of things against other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the falk, it's ground up stone, the powder?
Yes.
It sounds a lot like chalk.
Like chalk?
Chalk.
Oh, yes. Oh, don't confuse falk with chalk. It's very different.
I'm pretty sure they could throw you in jail if you confuse those two things.
Okay. So we've got Chris, who says it is falk, the rock powder. Whitney believes live clams called Tongans. Thank you. The Tongans. And John, which is rocks. Okay. We have Chauncey the Wizard in the comments who says, I vote for chalk, which is not one of the answers and an unhelpful comment. Thank you, Chauncey. I agree. Other Dave Thomas, we are off to such a strong start. We have 3 very convincing people, 3 very attractive people, as the comments have pointed out numerous times. And it's muddying the waters of what sounds right. But if I'm being honest, what sounds like it could be an island currency to me that would be unusual, yet believable, is the clams. Tongan. That sounds right to me. That sounds like it could be true. Everyone in the comments is agreeing with John, though, so this is an unpopular opinion. I usually agree with the comments, but I went with the comments last time, and it was correct, but let's mix it up. I'm going to vote for Whitney's answer. Tongan, the clams. I find that very convincing.
Thank you.
I find that very unique.
Oh, misinformation. Had you only gone with the comments, so you would have gotten it right, because it was John.
The comments were right again. They really
John was right about the stones.
Yep.
I have to say John was in last place in my mind.
I was just trying to keep the description casual. I felt like if I started dropping specifics, it would have muddied the general attractiveness level of everyone here, which is kind of the main barometer of rightness, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a couple of interesting things. Like Bitcoin and currencies like that have blockchain technology attached, which is when you're like trading Bitcoin, you know all the places where the Bitcoin has been. These rye stones kind of operate the same way, only very analog. If you like look at the stone sitting outside of the supermarket in the middle of one of the towns on Yap, like someone would be able to say, oh, George owns that stone. But before George owned that stone, that was Rebecca's stone. And before Rebecca, that was James's stone. So like everyone knows the history of ownership of these. There's actually, so that's one fun thing. And the other thing is there's actually a rye stone outside of a Swiss bank in Switzerland. Like it was put on a ship and sailed over to Switzerland. And it's like sitting there in the middle of a Swiss city, like outside a bank. And that's just someone's stone from Yap. Like that's their stone. It's like, oh, you want to trade for my stone? Well, it's over in Switzerland right now. But like, if you want to, sell me your used car, I will give you that stone.
And they don't care how much they weigh. It doesn't matter how much they weigh.
No, I mean, the heavier stones are generally worth more, but that's not the big determinant. Like a 2-ton stone is not twice as expensive as a 1-ton stone. Will, is this right?
It's right, 100% right.
How do they account for shipping fees?
So here's the thing. The people that own the stones don't care where they are. Like the person from the Swiss bank that bought the stone didn't actually buy the stone. They pretty much like gave the owner of the stone some money to essentially lease the stone to put in front of a bank. It's still like, Whitney, if that was your stone and you said, yeah, Swiss bank, you can have it for as long as you want, that's still your stone. And you'd be able to trade that for goods and or services.
Clams and powder.
Okay.
Clams and powder.
Thank you very much. No points. No points for that answer. That did not sound right to me.
You were so right, John. You've been robbed.
No points. That did not sound right. We're moving on to the third question in the first round, which is, when was the first U.S. patent issued and what was it for? All right. When was the first U.S. patent issued and what was it for? Whitney?
This is a surprising one. It was actually for the brassiere back in 1910, and it was issued to a woman. It was a woman, I believe her name was Elizabeth Rockwell, and she fashioned it out of 2 handkerchiefs and some curtain cord, and obtained the first U.S. patent.
Interesting. We'll see about that. John, what was the first U.S. patent given for?
The year was 1790, which coincidentally and unsurprisingly was the same year that the first U.S. patent law was passed. It was issued to an inventor in Vermont for creating a new technique to create something called potash, which is a type of salt. Added fun fact, the first patent was signed by George Washington.
What?
Mm-hmm.
In 1790?
Yeah, in 1790, it was signed by George Washington. Since then, there's now a U.S. patent office, and there are all these steps you take. But back then, the first U.S. patent law back in 1790 essentially said, oh, yeah, the Secretary of State is just kind of in charge of sorting it out. And they looked at the patent application, and they essentially said, hey, President Washington, can you just sign this? And he was like, yeah, sure. Good luck making salt. 1790.
Whitney, you look so suspicious.
I'm dubious about all of this, but I want to hear Chris's answer first.
All right, Chris, what's your answer?
Well, kudos to my fellow contestants, but they're very wrong. The year was 1822. The patent was phenomenal. As a scientist, I'm blown away at this particular patent. It was a simple till, but then also slid a seed. So you could till the ground and insert a seed into the ground at the same time. This was the first U.S. patent. It was done in 1822 by a fellow by the name of Joseph Wesson.
Joseph Wesson.
What year was that?
1822.
1822.
So until 1822, people did not know how to put seeds in the ground. They just kind of hoped God would take care of it.
John, this wonderful invention was till at the same time you shoot the seed down into the ground. right? Before they were telling, and then they'd have this whole other crew come in and put seeds in the ground. And Joseph came along. He's like, hey, why don't we just combine these two things? While I till the ground, I'll put a seed in there.
You would think that the ancient Phoenicians would have figured that out 2,000 years ago, but no. A guy named Joseph Weston in the 1820s. How about that?
All right. So we have three very different answers and three very different times for the first US patent. We 1790, what was it, Chris? 1820? 22 and 1910 for the first US patent. Now, right off the bat, 1910 sounds more to me like when we would have started giving out patents, because it was, during the time when a lot of stuff was new.
We weren't that organized before.
No, I don't even want to admit this, but I'm not sure George Washington was president in 1790. That would have been a long time to be president.
The first president happened after they left the first government of the U.S. was under the Articles of Confederation. That lasted about 10 years. And after that, they actually laid out. So the Declaration of Independence happened in the 1770s. The Articles of Confederation happened after that. And then the U.S. Constitution, as we now know it, happened a number of years later. After that, a president was elected, and it was George Washington, who was serving in 1790.
John, you are trying to take me off the trail right now.
You're absolutely right. That's very fair. We're not here for history. We're here to put seeds in the ground.
I don't care who was president. What I care about is seeds in the ground and bras on our backs, okay? No one in the audience is helping me once again. Very unhelpful audience this week. They're probably just blown away by how hot everyone is. We have people who are intrigued by the handkerchief bra, which makes sense. I find it very intriguing. Mm-hmm. I am skeptical that they would have given out the first patent to a woman. And I hate to say it.
They were reluctant.
But we don't really like to give things to women on the first try around here.
Especially back then. What would be more important? Sustenance. Shooting seeds in the ground.
That's true.
I don't know if you've ever heaved around a pair of boobs, Chris, but it is also quite important.
I've never had the fortune, but one day.
So, wait, John, what was your invention? I don't even remember.
It was for a manufacturing process to create something called potash, which is a derivative of salt.
Oh, that's so specific.
Chemical salt. It's actually potash and one other thing. That's also a derivative of salt. They were patenting a process, not an invention.
Yeah, that is very.
Kayleigh, I got to tell you, as a scientist, I know this. They didn't do process inventions until much later on in the patent process.
Oh. Chris with the details. I'm giving Chris 5 points. The audience says go with Chris, and I have to agree. Seeds in the ground is what is important in this country, not braziers and potash.
Will actually here. John was correct on that one again. It was actually salt, process for salt.
It was actually George President Washington?
George President Washington. So can he get those points back, actually, since he was robbed on, I think, 2 in a row?
Will, let me ask you something in return. Did that sound like a right answer to you? Potash? Did that sound right to me?
It sounded better than shooting seed into the ground. I'm just saying.
Well, now I'm offended because that was the answer that I picked using the audience's help and my mind. So we are not giving any points to John. Chris is now in the lead. How do you like that? First round is over. Chris is in the lead. I don't even know if he's given any right answers today, but he has given lots of answers that sound right to me. John, on the other hand, last place. No points so far. Whitney, right in the middle with 5 points. What do you have to say for yourself, John? How are you?
You know, I'm being told I'm wrong so much that I am questioning the facts that I have literally confirmed multiple times in the week leading up to this show. So I'm a little uncertain of myself. That said, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy actually about several shows on 2MB Studios, including one called Knights of Prospect, which is every Saturday night at 8 o'clock and stars 2 of the 3 people in currently on screen. It's a fun live play improv show. So as sad as I am at having 0 points, I am conversely incredibly happy that I get to have a wonderful theatrical comedy experience with a couple of you every Saturday at 8. So I'd say about Mets and Mets.
Excellent. That evens it out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, John. It's great to have you here on the show. And at some point, maybe we'll give you points. We'll see. We're going to dive into our next round. This is round 2. So get ready, audience. I'm getting some apologies in the audience for bringing me off the trail. And what I say to that is don't be sorry, because you know what? Chris sounded right. Seeds in the ground sounded right at the time. Go with your gut, audience. Keep helping me out. The next round begins with the first question, which is, why did some pirates choose to wear eye patches? Why did some pirates choose to wear eye patches? Perhaps an unexpected answer is afoot. John, why did pirates wear eye patches?
So pirates chose to wear eye patches not because of any eye trauma. They wore them for a couple of different reasons. There's not one definitive answer. One of the most popular, believe it or not, is to differentiate themselves from other pirates. Or other sailors. If one pirate ship tried to board a merchant ship, things get very crazy on the deck, and usually only one of the crew would have eye patches. Sometimes they kept it on one eye instead of the other. It was part of the aesthetic and all of that. There were other reasons why, but if you read about if you read kind of the stories of like naval and nautical adventure, it's usually so that crews of pirates could look fairly similar when they were on shore or when they were boarding another ship.
It was sort of like a shirts and skins kind of situation.
Yeah, like shirts or skins, like one team wearing a specific kind of penny, and high school dodgeball, something like that.
Excellent. Thank you, John, for that answer. That sounds right. We'll see. Chris, what's your answer? Why did some pirates choose to wear eye patches?
Well, when you look off into the distance, and you're using, excuse me?
Go ahead.
Is this going to be about eyes?
When you look off into the distance.
It's about eyes.
And you see something out there and you're not quite sure what it is. And so you grab your monocular to see what that might be. Could you keep your other eye open while you look through the monocular? I don't think so. You have to cover it so that you can see what's out in the monocular.
Is a monocular a telescope?
Oh, well, they didn't call it a telescope. It's not binoculars, it's monocular. It's the singular.
I see. So it's binoculars, but less convenient.
Pirates didn't have binoculars.
That would have been too hard to glue two together.
That's right.
I'm hoping that for the rest of the show, no matter the question, Chris pivots it back to eyes and how they work.
Whitney, what's your answer?
I'm sorry, I can't get over the word monocular. Oh, I'm so sorry. So this reason some pirates would choose to wear an eye patch is because in the world of pirating, sometimes you would have to go down to the hull of the ship very quickly, and it was very dark. So if you wore an eye patch over your eye, you would always have one eye that was prepped to see in the dark, because that pupil would already be dilated, because our eyes, if we're not using binoculars, are always getting ready to dilate and contract. So having that eye patch would always keep one eye prepped.
You know what? I think I know who is correct on this one. I feel really confident. All of these answers have their merits. But last night, I watched my partner leave the bright bathroom walk out into the dark and immediately walk into a wall. And this is a true story. And it was because his eyes had not adjusted. That's what he said. He said that his eyes, it just looks pitch black for that moment. Mm-hmm. And Whitney's answer makes a lot of sense because once your eyes adjust, you can see. And if you didn't have a lot of time, then you could walk into a wall. This is a true story, and it happened last night, and it's on my mind.
That's probably how a lot of pirates got peg legs, tripping over stuff in the dark.
Yeah, could be. Could be. The audience is supporting me on this, and because I have a personal story to back this up, I'm going to give these 5 points to Whitney for an answer that sounds very right to me. That sounds right.
We'll actually hear it sounds right, and it is right. Congratulations, misinformation. Congratulations, Whitney.
Thank you, Will, and congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. It feels good to get one right.
That's nice. We're starting the second round off on a great foot. We're going to move on to the second question, okay? Chris, I'm going to ask you to refrain from using the word monocular in this next answer. The next question is, what was the original planned use of Kleenex tissues? Once again, what was the original planned use of Kleenex tissues? Chris, I'm afraid to ask, but what do you think was the original planned use of Kleenex tissues?
Well, imagine it's World War I. You are looking out into the distance, using
what are
a
you?
monocular. But you see a haze in front of you. And what is that haze? That is tear gas. Kleenex tissues were supposed to be used as filters in gas masks as part of World War I. They never figured out how to actually make them filter things. And so they got set aside for a few years. And then someone realized that they are excellent snot collectors.
So I'm going to get Whitney's answer in a second, but just real quick, Chris. So they wanted to use them as filters, but they never actually got them to filter. That they just
the original plan, yes. So they were trying to create a 3-ply cotton filter.
Uh-huh.
They never actually got to the part where it could actually filter it, so they set it aside.
Uh-huh.
It's many inventions that were created out of the war that didn't end up actually getting used until much later in time.
Very interesting. So what they had accomplished was just kind of creating it, but it didn't work.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. You did break the one rule that I gave you.
Sorry,
but that answer sounds a little bit right. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the points. Whitney, what was the original use of Kleenex tissues?
So Chris was pretty close, it being kind of around World War I and particularly aviation. And pilots would wear goggles. And of course, when you're flying, there's a lot of things coming at your eyes, bugs, debris, all the things coming off. And they needed a quick way to wipe away whatever debris was clouding their vision. Mm-hmm. So Kleenexes were something that could be stored in pockets or in a cockpit that could easily be grabbed and wiped.
To wipe the goggles?
Mm-hmm.
I see. Two very interesting answers. Very convincing so far. War requires a lot of inventions. John, what do you think?
So Chris and Whitney are both right in that this does have something to do with war. But we need to go about 50 years further into the past. So during the American Civil War, which it's amazing to think like the Civil War and World War I were only 50 years apart. Because like World War I had like tanks and planes, and the Civil War had like dudes lining up in a row and just like firing guns. And it's totally different. But anyway, the guns that they did fire in the Civil War, the majority of them were muzzle loading, which means you would put a charge of gunpowder and a bit of wadding that used to be cloth. I'm going to get to that in a second. and then a ball. You would ram it down with a ramrod. You would then cock it, prime the breech, pull it all the way back, fire. You do that a couple of times a minute, all that. Anyway, the issue was the wadding. So the wadding used to be cloth. It used to be sackcloth, but the problem is if it got a little wet, if you didn't rip off a big enough piece, then the spark going from the flint into the breech would not light it, meaning it would not actually fire the musket ball, and you'd be putting more and more musket balls on top of the next one, and eventually you would die when you got shot. So they wanted a wadding that was made out of a thin, cheap, soft paper. You would know immediately if it was wet or not. If you reached into your pouch and you pulled out a dry piece, you could ram it down into the muzzle, and it would keep everything nice and packed, and it pretty much went off and fired every single time. So Kleenex, it wasn't called Kleenex back then, but that was the reason why it was invented, as cheap, effective, reliable wadding for Civil War muzzle loading weaponry.
And it worked for that? It worked for that purpose?
It did, mainly because you knew immediately if it was wet or not. That was the thing, is like wet sackcloth and dry sackcloth feel about the same because it's big, it's thick, it's heavy. In the heat of battle, you don't know. But thin, dry paper, thin, dry, soft paper, you could tell immediately, and it did work.
So everyone agrees that it's for war. We have some split in the audience as to whether John is right or whether Chris is right. That's where we seem to be leaning in the audience. And I have to say, I don't really remember what Chris said, but I did notice that when John started speaking about the war and the wadding, Whitney and Chris both nodded like we agreed. It seemed like you both agreed with what John was saying about the wadding and about the two wars only being 50 years apart.
Oh, no, I just think war is very interesting and that they were only 50 years apart.
I was just nodding to not laugh because I think wadding's a funny word.
Yep, wadding is a funny word, and you did a great job of maintaining your composure. So I do applaud
you
you for that.
So many times.
Misinformation, can I just ask you one quick question? How many times have you blown your nose in the last, say, 2 months, 3 months?
That's a very personal question, Chris. Why?
I'm just curious because when I blow my nose, it's not uncommon where the Kleenex just kind of disintegrates. I've got a strong...
How hard do you blow your nose?
Chris, that experience is not universal.
You
With
just
the power of
explode
a fire hose, he destroys tissues.
I'm just saying, how in the world could that have anything to do with gunpowder and guns firing? It's impossible. It's impossible.
Well,
if my nose can disintegrate it, what would gunpowder do to it?
Make it explode, which is the point.
You know what? Listen, the audience was split between John and Chris. Chris, you broke the one rule I gave you, which was not to use the word monocular. I'm going to give 5 points to John. John earned it. I don't know how guns work. It sounds right. That sounds right, John. You get 5 points. That sounds right.
Well, actually here, so I'm sure John was right about a lot of those facts, especially the Civil War being 50 years before that. But Chris was actually right on this one. It was for blowing noses.
Wait.
It was for filters in the gas mask.
Oh, the filters. Yes. I forgot about that. That feels like forever ago. I remember you telling the story about the gas. That's really it, Will? Yeah.
Yep, that's really it. He's correct on that one.
All right, Chris. Well, follow the rules and we'll see what happens next time. You get no points for that, despite it apparently being true. Third question in the second round, everybody. It is, what death-defying stunt was performed in the 18th century by a team consisting of a sheep, a duck, and a goose? What death-defying stunt was performed in the 18th century by a team consisting of a sheep, a duck, and a goose? Whitney, what was it?
Well, to bring up aviation again, like most of us before, it was invented. We were dreaming of it So, of course, it is the first team of animals to fly safely in a hot air balloon.
To fly by themselves?
Yes.
Very impressive.
Yeah,
Using their various
it's a simple mechanic. Yeah, it's a simple mechanic. The person who flew it was still there with ropes to make sure that they were okay. But of course, they were a non-human test subject, two of which could fly on their own if need be. I guess that inventor said, screw you to the sheep just in case. But yeah, it was the first safe flight of a hot air balloon.
That sounds right. Could be true. John, what was this stunt that these animals did?
So the timing that Whitney said is about right. And the stunt was indeed death-defying, but it was not nearly as valuable to humanity as what they actually did, which is the three of them were put in identical barrels and tossed over the American side of Niagara Falls. This was at a time in history where people started thinking about the idea of going over the falls in a barrel, like it started appearing in the literature of the time, but it didn't actually happen. And so a resident of Niagara, New York, in upstate New York at the falls, took three of the animals, either from his farm or nearby, put them in like tarred iron shod barrels, and but kind of cast them off into the river so that they went over on the American side. The sheep survived, the other two did not.
That's about to be expected.
How ironic.
I know, right?
Right, because flying. Chris, what did they do? What did these animals do?
Misinformation, imagine looking off into the distance and seeing a structure, a tent-like structure. You can't quite identify what it is. Luckily, it's now the 18th century, and so you can use binoculars. But it is a circus tent. Imagine going into that circus tent, misinformation, and seeing with your own eyes a sheep walking across a wire. Now,
No.
I'll give you, it was not a singular wire. It was not a singular wire. It was two wires. It was two wires because they couldn't get the sheep to walk down one wire. So they got two wires for the sheep, and they had the duck on its head and the goose on its butt.
No. Chris, I'm sorry. Absolutely.
Imagine seeing that.
I can imagine all I want. It does not sound right to me. Absolutely not. I need this round to be over. I'm going to give 5 points to John. I'm not even going to look at the comments. John, they went over Niagara Falls. I believe they would have tested that with animals first. The timing checks out. We're moving.
Well, actually, here, sorry to say, it was Whitney in the hot air balloon.
Okay, well, honestly, at least it wasn't Chris. Thank you, Will. No points to Whitney.
Come on.
No points. Oh, now the audience, please pick Whitney. You were too late. We have to move on. Chris. Chris, tell us one fun thing about yourself before the third round.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
What's one fun thing about yourself you want to share with the audience?
Oh, I'm working. This is a great new invention I've got in my mind. It's a business idea, it's a ride share where hot college hunks pick you up in a transport you to your destination. It's like Uber with college hunks and wheelbarrows.
What's it called?
I'm crowd surfing that name currently.
May I suggest monocular?
It's got a ring to it, doesn't it?
Thank you very much for sharing that, Chris. Thank you also for telling us that you're crowd surfing the name.
Yes, that's another term.
I'm glad that we can all work together on that. Let's move on. The third round, everybody. 3 questions in the third round. The first one is, there's a popular story in Liechtenstein about something strange that happened to the Liechtenstein army during the Austro-Prussian War of the 19th century. According to legend, what happened? Usually I say questions twice, but I have a feeling one of you put that in just so you could hear me say it. And you can read it off the bottom of your screen, but I'm going to John first. John, what happened to the army legend?
Sure. So Liechtenstein is an incredibly small country. It's often called a microstate like the Vatican or Luxembourg or Monaco. And as such, Liechtenstein doesn't have a large army. In point of fact, these days they don't have an army at all. But back during the Austro-Prussian War, they had an army of about 80 people. And those 80 people were sent to defend a mountain pass that was essentially the one way to get into Liechtenstein back then. And they sent 80 people out there, but 81 returned. So
Had a baby?
No. In point of fact, the legend goes an Italian soldier defected, started hanging out with the Liechtenstein soldiers, and liked their company so much that he abandoned Italy and lived the rest of his days in Liechtenstein.
I love
They suffered -1 casualties that war.
You know what, John? That's a lovely story. That doesn't really sound legend-worthy to me. That's just a stray Italian, but
the Italian found a sword in a lake before that, and it told him he would be king.
Okay, so maybe John gets the points. Chris, what's your answer?
This is a fascinating story. Imagine the following scenario. You're looking off into the distance and you see towards you. That army suddenly disappears. And in that cave, they stumble across some of the most exquisite art and gold moldings that were found. And they disappear. And only one comes out and lives to tell the story.
Where are the others?
Wouldn't we like to know?
Now that's a legend. Whitney, what's your answer?
Well, yes, the Liechtenstein army was very small. They were underdogs in this battle. And during one particularly gnarly battle, they took quite a beating and took respite in a forest that was nearby, kind of on the border of Liechtenstein and Germany. And it's said by the survivors of that battle that a group of women emerged from the forest, seemingly nurses that were provided by the government, that they were fully equipped with medical aid. They had clean water to drink, clean their wounds, dress them up, applied stitches where need be. And once all of the men of this army were kind of put back together again, these women went back into the forest. And when these surviving members of this small battalion asked their commanding officers about these women that had been recruited to be nurses, no one could provide them an answer as to where they had come from.
Oh, easy pick this one. Whitney's story is the only one that made me go, ooh. Chris's came close. John's just had an extra Italian. That's great. Chris, they disappeared. 79 people. That's good too, but Whitney's had a real element of mystery. I'm going to give 5 points to Whitney. I like that.
Actually, here, it was actually John Serpico who was right. It was the one additional Italian to the army.
Speaking as an extra Italian myself, I found a lot of affinity with this guy, an Italian guy that likes the history of microstates. A lot of kinship there. I say legendary because there are many variants of this story, and not one of them could be locked down. But the prevailing one is that that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well,
something else
Whitney,
that's fact is we have 10 minutes left to the show.
thank you, Will. Whitney, I really like that story. I don't know what to say. We have 2 more questions in the 3rd round. We have to do this. How does one hypnotize a frog? Chris, how does one hypnotize a frog?
It's very easy. You just look at it with your eyes, and you slowly move closer, slowly move closer, slowly move closer, and then you stick your tongue out just a little.
That sounds right, Chris. That sounds right. Whitney, how do you hypnotize a frog?
You have to be very gentle. You just flip the frog on its back in one hand, and then just like it had a large Thanksgiving dinner, you just massage its little belly.
That sounds right, too. John,
And eventually it just relaxes into a trance.
John, how do you hypnotize a frog?
Frogs are cold-blooded. They respond incredibly well to heat, either from a warm rock or from a human body. So the best thing to do is strip down to your skivvies, put a frog on you, or a rock, but I like the image of it just being on you. And once it eventually goes to sleep, eventually you can start doing things like introducing smells to it and things like that, and it will become docile and then eventually compliant with what you want it to do.
I love the visual of someone in their skivvies with a frog on their body, but I can't just sit here and imagine it because Whitney has been giving us a visual aid this whole time. The audience agrees. Whitney. Everyone thinks it's Whitney. 5 points to Whitney. This is how it goes in the 3rd round. Whitney
was correct.
Really? It's the rubbing?
Massaging that frog belly.
Whitney,
Way to
you
go.
know how to convince us. Excellent
Yeah.
work. We have one
Is
question.
there extra points for cuteness?
No. If there had been extra points for cuteness, you all would have gotten so many extra points this whole time. One question left in the 3rd round, and it is, what are avocados named after? How did they get that name? Whitney, what are avocados named after, and how did they get that name?
They're actually named after alligators because someone presumed them to be an alligator egg based on how the outside looks a lot like an alligator's skin.
That is a really good answer, Whitney. That sounds right. John, what is your answer?
So avocado, or the root word of it in a Peruvian dialect, refers to a mountain or a mound. I do not want to try to pronounce it, but essentially it's mountain or mound in a very, very specific Peruvian dialect. And when it proliferated amongst like the Latin-speaking world, it kind of translated to avocado. And avocado is usually the same word in most Latin root languages.
That sounds right too. And that seems right. Chris, what's your answer? Why are avocados?
So combine their 2 answers and you'll get the correct answer. And that is that the word avocado comes from the name that is used in Mexico and Central America for testicles. And when avocados were introduced to the US, they actually marketed them as alligator pears, Pears, because they looked kind of like potentially avocado testicles. And they same skin. So that's where they came from.
Chris, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to give you these points because it wasn't until you said it that I remembered, but I watched a movie once where somebody called testicles avocados. I think it might have been Robert De Niro, but he was like, oh, he said that. Chris gets the points. For that reason, Chris and Robert De Niro worked together to give Chris those 5 points.
And you are right.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes. What a successful 3rd round. Thank you so much, everybody. Will, you're going to want to get back in here because we have our lightning round to do with the last couple minutes here. We have a few lightning round questions. It goes super quick, so get ready to give your answers. And audience members, during this time, you give all the points. I'm not going to give any points out. You can give bonus points during this lightning round by putting someone's name and +1 to give them a bonus point. The game is pretty close right now, so give out bonus points to decide the winner. First question in the lightning round. Whitney, what's this?
That is the coat of arms of the Herald House.
Chris, what is this?
It's the coat of arms to an Irish community in Dorchester.
John, what's this?
Battle flag of the microstate of Monaco.
Will, what is this?
The logo for the band Queen.
The band Queen, you guys. Come on, let's do this. Next question. Who is this? Whitney, who is this?
That is the logo for a Colombian softball team.
Great. Chris, who is this?
It's the cover to my favorite Guar album.
John, who is this?
That is an artistic representation of the god Quetzalcoatl.
And Will, who is this?
John is correct.
John! Whoa! Someone is here to play. Another bonus round question. Whitney, what lake is this?
Titicaca.
Chris, what lake is this?
Oh, that is the lovely lake of Lake Tahoe.
John, what lake is this?
Crater Lake in the Pacific Northwest where I nearly died.
Will, what lake is this?
Lake Tahoe.
It's Lake Tahoe! Chris, you got it. Another bonus lightning round question. Whitney, what are those dots called?
Umlauts.
Chris, what are those dots called?
Red periods.
John, what are those dots called?
Monoculouts.
What are they called?
They're called tittles.
Tittles. What a cute word. Whitney, who is this?
Greg.
Chris, who is this?
No.
John, who is this?
That is Harry Houdini.
Will, who is this?
It's Harry Houdini.
Harry Houdini.
Well done.
The famed magician. Okay, last lightning round question. Last bonus lightning round question. Whitney, what is this device called?
That is a hot comb.
Chris, what is this called?
Back hair comber.
John, what is this called?
A sheep wrench.
Will, what is this actually?
It's a cake breaker.
Cake breaker. Breaks cake. Okay, people. Whitney, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to add up these last few points for everybody.
Sure. Whitney Hawkins, Bachelor of Arts from University of Pittsburgh. I am also on a show on Sunday evenings called Once Upon a Doodle, where you can essentially see a live cartoon being created before your very eyes on 2MB Studios.
It's a very fun show. And thank you, Whitney, John, and Chris for all being here. As far as I'm concerned, John got the fewest right, which means that he's my winner in my eyes. So well done, good sir.
Wow. I have the points. This ended up being very, very close. John, you got more bonus points during the lightning round than I have ever seen in the history of this show. The way the points settled was, Chris, you came first in our hearts, but last in the game with 17 points. Whitney, you came in first place with 25 points. With John, you started the bonus lightning round in last place, but jumped up to almost tie Whitney with 22 points. So Whitney, you finished with 25 points. You are the winner of this game and the winner of a degree from 2MB University. Hang it on your wall. Use it for all that you use accolades for. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Poof is up next starting at 8 p.m., the Magical Game Show, and we will see you all next week on That Sounds Right. Thank you and have a good night.